PRovoke Podcast is brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialists Marketeers. Support for this podcast comes from Notified, the integrated, intelligent and easy-to-use PR software. Get a free demo today at notified.com.
Hello everyone and welcome to the PRovoke Podcast. I'm Maja Pawinska Sims, PRovoke's EMEA editor, and I'm joined today by Kirsty Leighton, founder and CEO of Milk and Honey PR, which started life in London in 2017 and has since expanded to New York and Munich. It's clearly heading for global domination for a relatively new agency. Milk and Honey has been about working with purpose-driven businesses since its inception and was one of the first PR agencies to be certified as a B Corporation or B Corp in 2019, which I'll be talking to Kirsty about today, among other things. Kirsty, hello.
Hello, Maja. Lovely to connect with you.
Where in the world are you? You're not at home, are you?
No, I'm not. Today, I am in New York, where it is unseasonably warm.
How delightful. Are you picking up, are you doing lots of new business and talking to your team over there about exciting plans?
Predominantly talking to the team, which is really exciting because we like to think of ourselves as a people-first organisation. So as we're going into our plan for next year, I just really want to make sure that I've heard everybody's ideas, challenges, and so we can kind of make things bigger and better for everybody individually.
Fantastic. How many of you are there now?
54, which seems incredible. So yeah, 5.5 years ago, well, gosh, nearly 6 years ago now, it was me on my own, and now we're up to 54, which is really exciting.
That's incredible. How is that affecting I know you like to do an annual away day to Marrakesh. That's getting to be quite a big party now, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's more of an away week than an away day, because it's not the easiest place for everybody to get to. But what's really nice about it is it does feel that you've really escaped from the day-to-day, and so that really allows us to kind of come together collectively as a team, but to really dig in and explore different topic areas in terms of what does our culture look and feel like? How do we extend that into different territories? What does it mean as we open up new offerings? How can we continue to make that fall appropriately within our broader mission of wanting to work with ambitious growth companies that are having a positive impact on the planet?
Yeah, sometimes it's just lovely to all be in the same room together, isn't it? Especially now. It does make a difference.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And it also makes working together so much easier when you've got a real kind of 3D relationship with everybody.
I know exactly what you mean. Having just got back from seeing my own PRovoke team for the first time all together since 2019, it's just like things just move further and faster, and relationships are just, they just are vastly improved. Before we talk about B Corps in the PR industry, tell me a little bit about your own career, why you founded Milk and Honey, what your vision was, and how that's evolved over the past 5 and a bit years.
Thank you. Well, I have worked in public relations on the agency side for, a little over 30 years now. And I've been incredibly fortunate during that time to have worked with really some of the biggest and the best agencies and indeed clients in that time. I started off in a small independent that was then called ICAS, that's since changed its name to Publicity. It's part of the Porters Group. So that was really wonderful. I got the opportunity to learn a little bit about B2B and B2C. From there, I then went to Weber, before it was Weber Shandwick, showing my age. And that was really around the time that the tech bubble was really taking off. So the whole media landscape was incredibly different there. So again, it was more about getting proposals out in a timely fashion, and really there was a strong focus on written content then. From there, I then went into Edelman, where I ran the tech team in London, obviously much smaller Edelman at that time. And this is still, 20 years ago. And I got the opportunity to work on some phenomenal clients. I was actually seconded in-house to Orange for a little while to build up their B2B offering. They were doing phenomenally well at the time in the consumer space, but were doing less well from a board perspective in terms of being taken seriously as a B2B offer. So I was brought in-house to build that team. I then took a little career break to have my children, both of whom are bearded and adults now. So that really was a long time ago. And then from there, one of my colleagues, David Ingle, who I worked with at Edelman, had moved over to Wagner Edstrom and was loving it over there. So I came over to join him again as head of technology at the time, which sounded quite grand. There was 32 people in the London office at Wagner Edstrom then, but 31 of those 32 worked on the Microsoft account because they just got started over in London. So I was brought in to kind of really start the technology team. I was working very closely with the amazing Claire Lamata, who then gave me an opportunity to set out other divisions. So then set out consumer marketing, corporate, public affairs, healthcare. Was then given the opportunity to run client development globally, which meant running kind of the bigger pitch opportunities, but also then working with the team internationally. At the time, Wagner Edstrom was a different beast. It was 820 people worldwide, and they had offices in APAC, in Europe, and in North America. And really, that's when I started thinking about, okay, well, how do you influence other leaders without telling them what to do? How do you work with individuals to help add value to their P&Ls and to their business offering? And kind of pull people in the same direction. So that's when I started really looking at underlying business plans and underlying scorecards to help draw everybody in the same direction. And by pulling 820 people in a similar direction, obviously with the guidance of all of the different leaders around the world, then it really accelerated new business, new revenue acquisition. And I got to work with some absolute phenomenal players in the market. Corey de Brouw was my line manager for a long time, and just a phenomenal individual to learn from. So that was an amazing time where I really felt that I challenged my learning as a communications professional. From there, I then kind of tried a couple of different things, but I think having experienced this opportunity to really rethink fundamentally the role of business and the role of a communications agency from such a macro perspective, I kind of probably danced around a little bit. I then went over to Hudson Sandler, which was a very different type of agency again. So this was UK only, and they were focused on financial communications and M&A work. Again, a phenomenal team of highly talented individuals. And I was brought in because at that time, it was just when the SEC here in the US was changing how communications to market could be delivered. And they had approved that you could communicate to the capital markets using Twitter. And of course, that was just a very different model for a lot of the more traditional financial PR agencies. So I was kind of brought in to look at broadening out and evolving methods of communication to market, and also to start thinking about corporate brand a little bit more. So that was really exciting. I was there for 5 years, learned an awful lot. I then kind of sat back a little bit. They were going through a process of coming out from under Huntsworth, and I thought, actually, do you know what? I've had such a rich opportunity over the last 25 years at that time of really kind of understanding communications from a number of different worldviews. And I thought, actually, you know what? Maybe now is the time to think about doing something on my own. I've been given the opportunity to grow countries, to grow divisions. I know I can do that. I've been given the opportunity to grow team and to learn from phenomenal world-class communicators and world-class business leaders. So actually maybe now's the time to kind of think about putting that into practice. And I thought, okay, well, if I was going to do that, what would be some of the principles that I wanted to start off with? And for me, that was, let's work in an environment where people are kind to each other, number one, and that people can enjoy their work. Because very often we've all been in organizations where we had to work on a client that doesn't necessarily respect what we're trying to do or appreciate what we're trying to do. And I thought, actually, I'm too old, I'm too long in the tooth to do that now. I don't want to play that game anymore. And so there was some little learnings from along the way. So for example, I said, okay, so let's make sure that no client is more than 10% of revenue, and let's have our baked in attrition at 15%, so we can sack any client at any time if we don't want to work with them, and it will have no structural impact on the business. So we're never going to be in a position where we're overly reliant on any one client because of revenues. And actually making some of these little decisions along the way really changed how we were able to build the business. Another thing that I'd learned along the way is that, from a line management perspective, you need to be close enough to your direct report to understand the challenges of their role, but you also need to be far enough away that it's always your intention to make sure that you're pulling people up and you're enabling them to be the best version of themselves. And I'd been in an organization where perhaps people were line managed by only one level above. And the unforeseen outcome of that was that people were being held back, information was used as power, because it was seen as a threat. So again, there was all these little learnings that were unintentional, I'm sure, throughout my career that I took from other agencies, that I said, okay, if the intention is to do good work for great clients and to enjoy the work that we're doing, then what is some of the infrastructure we need to put in place to do that? And then I kind of said, actually, you know what, I've also been doing this for 25 years now. Whilst I want to do great work, I actually want to do more than that. Great work is wonderful and will make me feel good for the day, but actually, wouldn't it be great to build a business where we had a positive impact on the communities that we work in, the industry that we're part of, but also on the planet, and to leave some sort of legacy where we're doing better and making an impact. And that's when I kind of really came across the B Corp movement, which looks at fundamentally moving businesses from being a shareholder primacy organization, so an organization that exists to serve its shareholders. Fundamentally, that's on a kind of on a financial level, and to move it from that model to a stakeholder primacy. So you're thinking about the people that you're working with, not just the people that own the business. You're thinking about the environments that you're working in, the clients that you're working with, the ecosystems that you're working with, the communities you're kind of operating within, and then the flow of capital within all of that. And that really, really appealed to me. And so I kind of started that journey and got the accreditation back in 2019. And it's been a wonderful guiding light throughout the last couple of years in terms of what better looks like.
So you started it fairly early on. If you kind of only got going in 2017 and you're a B Corp by 2019, it does feel like that was kind of really baked in from quite early on in your vision for what Milk and Honey was going to be as an agency.
Yeah, interestingly, I think I knew what I wanted it to try and be, and then I almost needed to find the right organization or the right accreditation that would demonstrate that. So, for example, our founding values are around energy, bravery, loyalty, and respect. Now, clearly, everybody says that they're respectful, and everyone says they're collaborative, and everyone says that they're kind of energetic about the work they're doing. So I really wanted to make sure that for everything that we said about ourselves, we could prove it. So for example, the respect piece is a difficult one. And so I wanted to find something that would demonstrate us respecting one another, respecting our clients, respecting the planet, respecting the community. And B Corp really became that vehicle to help us deliver against that. And so every year we take one of those values and we say, okay, how can we really bring this to life and evidence it, have some sort of external ratification that this really is how we behave. So for example, last year we were focused on collaboration, and we were looking at that and saying, okay, how can we really ensure that we can bring this to life? Now, I set up Milk and Honey in the first instance, wanting it to be a kind of a shared ownership organization. And I made the fatal mistake of setting up as an LLP, as a limited liability partnership, thinking that was the best way to create shared ownership. As it turns out, it's great for a small amount. It's not great for everybody. So then, having explored the market a little bit more, I came across the EOT model, the Employee Trust model, which exists in the UK, and that way round, it creates shared ownership for everybody. And actually, the majority of ownership is for the team. So the team has to own 51+% of the organization to be accredited as an EOT. But what's quite nice about it is that there are no, it's automatic. As soon as you've been with the organization for a stipulated amount of time, for us that's 12 months, which is the maximum qualification period, then you automatically become a co-owner in the business, and shares are gifted to you, so you're not buying in, and they're then held in trust. So fundamentally what that means is that profit share is across the organization, and importantly, decision making and kind of shared direction. Everybody has a very active role, not just from a cultural perspective, but also from a legal perspective in terms of contributing to the direction of the business.
So that's just one of the ways that you demonstrate your commitment to your people. What about the kind of the purpose and planet bit? How do you actually evidence that and prove to B Labs that you are doing, that you should be a B Corp, and then when you have that accreditation, you're continuing to do well at that? What evidence do you provide for them?
That's a really brilliant question, and actually they are very rigorous. So there are two different organizations. So B Corp is the kind of the driving force, and the kind of the shared community that brings everybody together. But then there is an organization called B Laboratories. So those guys actually check in how you're doing. And there are 5 key areas that are assessed within the accreditation. And they span governance, workers, community, clients, and environment. And within those 5 sections, there are we've just gone through the reaccreditation, so I know exactly how much there are. There are 530 different topic areas, and each of those needs to be evidenced. But what's quite nice about it is that it shows you what better looks like. So it'll ask, for example, what percentage of non-executive team members are shareholders in the business, and it'll say less than 10%, 10 to 15%, 20%, more than 50%, more than 75%, and as you choose those different potential options, it adjusts the score, so you can see what better looks like. And all the way through the B Lab experience, you can see what better looks like. And the idea is that once you become accredited, and you need to get 80 points plus to become accredited, it's then an ongoing improvement process that you go through, and you constantly kind of reset yourself some new goals in terms of what better looks like. And then you have to go back through an you have to be re-accredited every 3 years. And again, it's a very rigorous process where everything has to be evidenced. And there's an external auditor that goes through that kind of checks all the documentation. So it's for those of us within the PR universe that have been through PRCA's CMS, their consultancy management standard. That's a kind of like an Uber light version.
Okay. Now, you said you've just been reaccredited. The latest B Corp scores are in, as they might sound strictly, and you're doing well even within this, very committed cohort, aren't you? Like quite astonishingly well.
We work very hard at it. We kind of month by month from a board perspective, we look at the scores and see what better looks like. And so it's a kind of an ongoing visible presence. But yes, I'm delighted to say that we've improved our score by almost 70 points to 154.2, which is a great score, and actually I think makes us the highest scoring communications agency in the world, which sounds very dramatic. But what's really great about it, thank you. But what's really great about it is that there are actually now 60 PR agencies across the world that are B Corp accredited, and there are more and more organizations that are going through the process at the moment. So increasingly, it's becoming a kind of a better known standard. And one that's kind of really meaningful across the business environment, and one that PR agencies in particular are taking a leading role in. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Well, we seem to be writing every week now about another agency achieving or going for B Corp status. Obviously, you guys don't cry wolf, another very early adopter within the PR universe. Freud's, I think, was the first big agency to achieve B Corp status. And then I just did a quick search of our archives, and literally in the last year or so, we've talked about Sunny Side Up, Wild West, Kindred, Social, Greenhouse, Ulu, and PHA Group. Do you all talk to each other about your experiences?
We do, and in fact, it was the lovely John Brown over at Don't Cry Wolf that talked to me about B Corp in the first instance. So when I was talking to him about looking for some sort of infrastructure that would allow us to really give us a path towards what greater respect would look like.
I'm sure
it's a very sharing community, actually, which is lovely. And so, we share best practice, and we share policies back and forth, and we share insights and mistakes, and that's helpful. Because the idea is that we're all making ourselves better, not to compete with one another, but if we're all doing better for the planet, if we're all doing better for community, if we're all focused on what better DE&I looks like, what better environmental practices look like, what better kind of carbon neutral policies look like, then we're all winners.
Why do you think we are seeing more agencies becoming B Corp, though? I mean, it sounds like a really good kind of very holistic auditing process for doing business better in the world within the industry. But what is it about comms particularly that you think is kind of where agencies have recognised that this is a really good thing to be doing?
I think at our core, we are responsible for organizations, for brands, for individuals, for corporations, for products, for their reputation in market. And so therefore, anything that we can do to ground ourselves in what best practice and what good reputational policies look and feel like makes us all better. So I think it really appeals to communicators to be able to have that evidence. And I think PR, even more so than other marketing strategies or other marketing disciplines, really does focus in on how do we prove it. And this kind of B Corp structure delivers a lot of that for us. So I would say that helps. And also, you know what, again, we're a very friendly, interwoven international community that likes to share best practice. And so I think when one or two of us comes across something, we share it with one another. And then we kind of follow suit.
Do you think it gives you more credibility, especially when you're advising clients around sustainability, ESG, all that other kind of good corporate citizen stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of organizations claim to be the best at this and doing excellent work there. And, it's, again, I would come back to, this provides evidence that we really are walking the talk, and we know and practice great ethical, social and environmental leadership.
Is it good for new business?
Yes, it is. But for us as an organization, we've made a choice to only work with organizations that have a clear purpose and do no harm to people or planet. So for us, actually making sure that organizations align to, our values align to their values just makes for a much more kind of successful and synergistic relationship. So from that perspective, yes, it does help. It really does help from a new business perspective. But also I think, regulation is catching up right around the world in terms of what better looks like. And so again, some of the policies that were perhaps really stood out and were seen as best practice 2 or 3 years ago are now kind of becoming more hygiene factors. And regulation is catching up. You look at especially from an ESG perspective, what organizations now need to legally report on is different, is hugely different to what it was 5 years ago. You look at it at diversity, inclusion and belonging, and you say, okay, well, what does best practice look like there? And again, there's policies and infrastructure and increasingly regulation that's coming in place that again is moving the needle in terms of what is considered to be best practice and what is now so it's always moving. And interestingly, the B Lab scores move with it. So for example, our score as an organization, because you kind of self-score as you're going along, has actually come down recently because the B Lab community go in and kind of readjust scores almost, I think, quarterly. And so those scores do fluctuate a little bit as well. So it really is a great platform for kind of keeping up to speed with what good, better and best looks like.
So you can't rest on your B Corp laurels. It's not like you've got it and then you never have to keep up to date with what the requirements and what better or even best looks like. You've really got to keep at it.
Absolutely, yes.
Do you? So
it's not something for somebody to do to just kind of think, oh, okay, right, I'd like to have that as a badge. It's a way of working. It's an ethos. You have to change your legal structure. It's one of the key requirements is you have to change your legal structure from being a shareholder primacy business to being a stakeholder primacy business. So your articles of association or bylaws, as it would be over here in the US, are legally restructured. So your reason for existence changes fundamentally.
Do you think every PR agency could or should aim for B Corp status?
So the reason why I'm hesitating is because I don't think every organization would want to, but in terms of, is it the right thing to do for workers? Is it the right thing to do for community? Is it the right thing to do for the planet? I would say absolutely it is. Is it going to work for everybody? Absolutely not. And because it's not about just working with organizations that are doing everything fantastically. The whole idea of the movement is kind of incremental increases. So again, it's about getting as many organizations as possible to do things better, not just to celebrate those that are already getting it right. And so the movement started in the US, I think 15 years ago. And then it's kind of it's increased its international presence since then, but it's still really gathering momentum. There are 5,000 accredited B Corps in the US, and we've just ticked over 1,000 in the UK. So it's still at the beginning, but it's gathering momentum at speed.
It does sound like it's a real driver for how you do business. How does your international expansion, obviously we mentioned New York, Munich was the latest one to service the Germany, Austria and Switzerland. What's next for Milk and Honey, and how do your expansion plans in terms of geography kind of link back into your B Corp status and what you're trying to achieve as a business?
Rolling business plan that we're working to, so that we don't just get caught up in short-term decision making, and that's been helpful for us. And it is our intention to expand out a little further. We would like to expand into APAC, and then potentially also look at the Middle East and the Africa region. Now, obviously, it's a little trickier there, A, because of time zones, but B, because of just different cultures, different values, different ways of working. So I think probably Singapore would be the next target that we would be looking at. Obviously, it's predominantly English language. It's a democracy. It's relatively easy to get set up over there. So we're just kind of testing that. As you know, and I'm sure lots of your listeners may remember, we actually opened up in Australia and Sydney in 2020, but with the country being kind of shut down for a couple of years, we found that wasn't optimal for us. So there was a key learning there where we opened up and then had to put the business on pause. So I think looking again at the APAC region, we probably wouldn't go into Australia. Not that it wasn't a good market for us, it was just finding the right talent was really tricky during lockdown. So it probably would be more eyes to Singapore. And then looking at the Middle East and Africa, again, there are different ways of working. We're a predominantly female-led and run business, and so there are certain markets where that would be harder than others. But we're kind of keeping an eye on opportunities within Dubai that plays quite a meaningful role across that territory. So yeah, that's more of a watching brief, to be honest, rather than any solid plans.
Okay, well, can you let me know about Singapore? That's quite good as a news story.
Yeah, well, there's nothing to tell yet. It's something that we're just keeping an eye on, because also one of the things that we want to be able to do more and more is to run international campaigns. We're doing that and doing it really, really well. We've got some phenomenal talent. Really senior talent internationally, and so we want to be able to optimize that. We've got some excellent international partners that we're working with, but the kind of the dot on the map that's missing, in much the same ways as the PRovoke network is set up, is that kind of Singapore. I know for you it has been more Hong Kong, but obviously with the influence of China now, that's probably less of a it would be easier, I think, for Singapore. So that's what we're looking at.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. And obviously the team will be growing all the time you're doing that. You were our best agency to work for in EMEA for like 3 years running, I think, weren't you? And narrowly picked the post this year. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, is this a concern of yours that as you grow, you continue to really focus on being a very people-focused business?
For me, that was the driver, that was one of the principal drivers in setting up. It's just kind of, I want to enjoy the work I'm doing. I want to grow and learn from the people that I'm working with. And I see doing brilliant work as being a kind of a happy output from that. But to be honest with you, every client that we've worked with for more than a year, we've won awards for the work that we've done together. So it really, that is working. But enjoying the work that we're doing and challenging ourselves is really important. Now, clearly, the bigger you get, the harder that is. And so that is something that we need to work on. But so, for example, in London, we're a team of 30 people now. I don't really want any one office. I mean, office is a bit of a joke. We've obviously got people who are down in Devon or in Ramsgate or in Paris or what have you. But I don't really want any one office to be more than about 40, 45 people, because I think, again, you then start looking at, okay, we need an exec or a manager or a director on this, rather than I need Adam or Zarina or Lewis on this. I always want us to be a collection of talented individuals, all of who have different skills, interests, and meaningful additions to make to the organization, to the client, to the team. So I want us to stay there. So it may well be the case that perhaps in the next 5 years, we may well open another office or two in the UK, so that we don't lose that real kind of that individual valuable contribution culture.
I've always really admired you, Kirsty, for your energy and the fact you always have at least one new thing on the go, and I guess that kind of rolling 5-year plan is part of that. But where do you get your energy from, and what do you think you're like as a leader?
Well, that's probably best to ask other people. So as you know, because obviously we're quite friendly, my husband and both of my sons are all ADHD, and I'm neurodiverse myself, and I think that in itself, being around that kind of constant jelly bean energy, is a real driver for me, and so therefore being able to channel it. And one of my key learnings whilst being part of the amazing Wagner Edstrom team was, if you can channel multiple people's energy into a meaningful, smart goal that's long term enough, so everyone can have their own version of what that looks like, but we're all pulling in the same direction. I think that allows us to move at speed, and I think that allows people to bring their own energy to any kind of development or growth opportunity. And so I personally find that incredibly energizing. We do also work really hard to make sure that we're not recruiting in time. So I'm sure that for the introverts in the team, they probably find it quite exhausting. But we do try to make sure that we don't recruit in type, because obviously any organization needs introverts and extroverts, needs thinkers and feelers, needs people that are brilliant on the creative front, but also those that are really focused on the process. And by bringing those different energies, those different talents together, it makes for an optimal team. So that's what we try and really focus on. So I would hope that as a leader, I am energizing and inspiring, but also I think I've got quite a kind of a maternal approach to responsibilities and to growth, in personal growth. I mean, I hope that's what I'm aiming for, Maja.
The whole hive with a milk and honey flavored jelly bean right at the top of it. What have you we've been doing this 3 things piece for a little while now, and I know we've got yours coming up, Kirsty. But just in summary, what have you learned about yourself personally and professionally over the past couple of years since the pandemic started?
Gosh, that's such a massive question, because I think like most people, I went through a complete roller coaster of different experiences, from first being locked down, feeling really isolated, not doing as an extrovert, not doing brilliantly without having lots of people around to bounce off, to kind of almost feeling a bit depressed about things, to then kind of rising like a bit of a phoenix and giving a very strong direction as we were finding ourselves coming into a more difficult economic situation. So yeah, there's been lots of change, and I think one of the things that I've learned about myself is that change is good, embrace it and allow it, but appreciate that everybody is going to view it differently, will respond and react to it differently at different times, and that's okay. You know, it's okay for everybody to respond to things differently, to want different things from their workplace. And again, I think if you share goals and direction of what you're trying to achieve, rather than instruction and guidance on what to do, so focus on what to achieve rather than what to do, then everyone can pull in the same direction in a way that works best for them, whether they're in the office, whether they're at home, whether they're on the beach or you know, wherever they are. And so that's been interesting. Another thing that I've really come to appreciate is that I need more time off now to kind of reset and to recenter. I don't know whether that's just an age thing or the joys of being in the full throes of menopause right now, which has provided its own kind of love and challenges. But, you know, really making sure that I'm taking time to just stop working. Whereas, you know, for most business owners and leaders, you feel a very acute sense of being responsible for people's ability to pay their mortgages and their rent. And so sometimes you push on when really you should just stop. I think it enriches and energizes all of us by having a proper stop. And so that's something that I've forced myself to do a lot more over the last couple of years. Also, being menopausal means that my brain doesn't work as well as it used to.
Yep.
Yeah, and another thing that's been fantastic for our organization is really bringing in some phenomenal talent that can do and think about things that my brain doesn't have access to. And I have found that really exciting and really stimulating. And so in the last year, we've brought in creative people that we didn't necessarily have before. We've brought in a head of planning, which was a function that we didn't have before. We've brought in a global head of media, which we didn't have before. And so that has been really interesting, but it's taken us to get to the size we are to be able to do that. But to, again, have people that have a more specialized view on the world, that, you know, spans multiple sectors, but, you know, just in terms of the art of our trade, that has been really exciting to kind of explore and play with that a little bit. So I've very much enjoyed that, and I think the broader team has enjoyed that as well. So continuing to, so I guess the learning there is continuing to be brave about thinking about how we view our work and our output, and constantly challenging that. And clearly, you know, we've done an awful lot of work in the last few years on digital and social space. But again, really taking lessons from other marketing disciplines and thinking about how best to keep upping our game.
Always a busy bee, Kirsty, if you don't mind the pun. Thank you.
Love a pun.
I know you do. Thank you so much. It's brilliant to get a proper deep dive insight into why you're a B Corp, why it matters, and why it matters for the PR industry as well, and to hear what's going on at Milk and Honey. And we will be watching you, as we have done since you started, with interest. Have fun in New York, and I will see you soon. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much.
You have been listening to the PRovoke Podcast, brought to you by PRovoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialists Marketeers. Support for this podcast comes from Notified, the integrated, intelligent and easy-to-use PR software. Get a free demo today at notified.com.